Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Sorry, I was a little bit late. I was actually on a call with another magazine, basically about my In Defense of Demolition book, and it ran just a little bit late. So my apologies for that. Um, had lots of jokes, references planned for today. Today is show number 1066. So I was going to throw in references to the Battle of Hastings, but kind of feel like the wind's been taken out of my sails over the weekend, and then more specifically this morning. It will look slightly odd if you're reading what I've been writing. It will look slightly odd because the way that the information has come together. There was an accident on a demolition site up in Paisley in Scotland on Friday last week, which I was made aware of. The guy that was injured was taken to hospital and has subsequently died of his injuries. So I covered that on Demolition News and on Demolition Insider, and I was doing it in a kind of, because we didn't have the details, I was doing it in I guess, a broader, more nuanced way. I'll come back to that in a moment. If you remember rightly, it was only last week I was talking about how ridiculous it is that we have a league table of demolition and construction deaths. And you will recall as well that in my wishes for the new year, I was hoping that we could make it to March until the demolition industry actually claimed a victim. Well, we didn't even make it to the second week, 10th of January. This guy has died, which is bad enough. Anybody dying is awful and tragic, and all of the things that go with it. But the reason it's taken the wind out of my sails is I learned first thing this morning that the guy, 36 years old and father of 6 children. I'm a father of 4, and I can only imagine the impact of me not being around for my family. 6 children and 36 years old. You can read the details of all of that over on Demolition News. But I did write a thing for basically as a bit of a holding pattern because I didn't have the details. And I do think I don't want to dwell on it, but I wrote it because I think it's a thing that needs to be said. So if you just bear with me a second, I will start the show in a second, but I just want to get this out into the world because I do think it's worth saying. On the 1st of January, he probably made New Year's resolutions. Maybe he was going to get fit, lose weight, give up the dreaded fags. Maybe he was planning to take part in dry January. He was probably looking ahead to summer holidays and to family birthdays. Maybe he had some important anniversaries to look forward to. Perhaps he'd committed to seeing more of his parents, his family, or his friends, to support his local football team or his rugby team. Maybe he was working towards a promotion at work. But none of that will now happen because on the 9th of January, just 9 days into the new year, he was injured on a demolition project in Paisley in Scotland. And on the 10th of January, just 10 days into 2026, the man died from the injuries he'd sustained. He will never fulfill his resolutions. He'll never go on that holiday, spend time with his family and friends. He'll never get to do any of those things. He was 36 years old. Now, I did say here, we don't know if he leaves behind a wife who is now staring at an empty chair, or children who are asking when dad's coming home. We now know that is the case. But we do know his name. That's over on Demolition News now. But the biggest thing was, this was someone's best mate, some mother's son, a face in the local pub, a voice in the crowd, a man with 100 chapters still left to write. But those chapters won't be written, and his resolutions will go unfulfilled, and the holiday bookings will be cancelled because the demolition industry has claimed another victim. By all accounts, the guy in question, I'm going to get his name absolutely spot on. Bear with me 1 second. I just need to go to the right place because I don't want to get this bit wrong. Oh, come on. Where are we? Yes, a guy was called Derek Russell, father of 6 from Ardrossan up in Scotland. A Rangers fan, and his son Kai is asking Rangers to do a minute's applause during the 36th minute of the Scottish Cup match against Annan Athletic at Ibrox this Friday. Worked for Kasky Limited, an NFDC member company. Not that these things are important at this point in time, but 36 years old and a life cut short by the industry. There's no other way of saying it. It is by the industry. We don't know the circumstances of how he died, and I don't actually think that matters. But the combined demolition construction industry last year claimed 35 lives. It's already claimed another one now. And we are roughly, where are we? 12th of Jan? Yeah, we're roughly 6 weeks away from the 10th anniversary of Didcot. In terms of technicalities, whatever this guy was working on, I think it was a housing estate, would be markedly different to a boiler house at a power station. But they're part of the same industry. And every single time somebody is killed, we clutch our pearls to our chest and we wring our hands and, oh, this must never happen again. Then it does. Dan, I agree with that. There's a lot to be said, but problem is no one's listening, goes in one ear and out the other. It's an awful thing to say. But I think demolition deaths, and I would say the same for construction, they're too frequent, but their frequency is so far apart that we can forget. I mean, I go back to the aftermath of Didcot. There was this almost a universal, not just here in the UK, but overseas as well. There was like a universal intake of breath and, oh God, 4 people killed. We really, really must make things better. And then that inhale became a slow exhale. And then sure enough, sooner or later, somebody else was killed. And then somebody else was killed. And then somebody else was killed. Dan says, also, NFTC have not mentioned or said anything about it. It's part of the course. Do you know, I actually thought this morning I would send them an email and say, are you going to make any sort of comment? Do you have anything to add, as this was one of your member companies involved? Even if it was just a message of, our thoughts are with, our member company and we'll be working with them. And so, and in the end, I sat here and I thought, what's the point? What's the point? Because I'll tell you exactly how it would work. I will send them that message. They won't want to answer it, but they'll feel beholden to. So they will get their PR company to write something. We are working with the company. It's a tragic time, but we will come back to it. I don't want a press release. I want some sort of humanity, some sort of understanding that this has happened again. On your watch, it's happened again. So I didn't bother. And if anyone from the NFDC is watching right now, if you'd like to make a response, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to publish it. If you want to come on this show and talk about it, I'll be more than happy to welcome you on. But I bet you don't. Let me go back. Gary Muirhead is actually back at work. How was the week off, Gary? Unexpected weeks off. I think to begin with, oh, this is fantastic. No work, and I'm being paid. Get to watch Mark on the big screen. But I think come Tuesday, it's like, bored now. I want to go back to work. Chris Ford also saying goodbye to the white stuff. We've had the strangest weather here. Obviously, we were threatened with, what was it, Storm Goretti on Friday? Nothing. No, I mean, literally, the worst we had was a light breeze. Last night, where we had no storm warning, it was blowing a hoolie here. I mean, literally sort of My wind was flapping in, well, my wig rather, was flapping in the breeze. I'm not wearing a wig, but you get the idea. Dan Cullen is here. Jim Turner is here. There we are. Dan saying good morning. Happy Monday from a damp Strood. Ken Hatcher is cloudy. Cloudy with a chance of meatballs. Dan says there's a lot to be said, but problem is no one's. We've done that one. Sad news, says Ken. Mark Whiting is here as well. Mick Norton is here. And Dan saying sad, unfortunately, but it is something we can all try to do, not have these fatalities. But construction is unstoppable. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I think that's one of the things I find hardest to tolerate is the fact that I said this more specifically when my mum died. My mum died, and I went out in the car, and I was astounded and angered by the fact that the world was just carrying on, like they hadn't realised that my life had just taken a very, very horrible turn. But even now, you know full well that the demolition industry has lost one of its numbers, or lost one of its number. There will be that clutching of the pearls to the chest, and "Oh, isn't this tragic?" and thoughts and prayers and everything else. All right, that's back to work, and so we go on. There's not even a pause to to take on board and to process what's happened, not a pause to potentially learn from it. It, when that's the other thing that I thought immediately after learning of this. The poor guy died on the 10th of January. When will that come to fruition in terms of an HSE investigation? And based on their current average, 2032, 2035. 6 children may have to wait until 2035 to find out precisely how and why their dad didn't come home. Hard it is, I think, to put together an entertaining show based on all of that, but I will do my level best. So let's get the thing underway, shall we? With a bit of this. No, that's not the one I want. I'm supposed to be telling you what's going on at the moment, aren't I? Yes, it is Monday, the 12th of January. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. Excuse me, the authentic voice of the UK demolition industry. In today's show, Komatsu targets waste with its latest wheel loader. Kobelco performs on the Emerald Isle. SWN Plant enjoys the benefits of a JCB backhoe loader, and 1.5 miles of demolition in 4 minutes. Got that to look forward to. And in today's morning monologue, looking but not seeing, which I hope will make perfect sense when we get there. Sorry, my screen has just gone completely mental, and I don't know why. That's the bit I need. Okay, so shall we crack on? Let's start with a bit of news from the industry. Jim, I've just seen your message. I will come back to you in just a moment, but I want to share this one first of all. This coming to you live from Construction Index this morning. John F. Hunt has been hit by a client collapse. Financial results from demolition and land remediation specialist John F. Hunt show softening profits and slowing growth. Turnover to the 31st of March 2025 was up 8% at £193.3 million, and a gross margin of 16.1%. However, there was a £5.1 million exception charge taken due to the collapse of a client, a major London-based hotel developer, leaving contractors high and dry. That's meant that the final pre-tax profit was £101,000, down on 7.9 million the year before. Imagine that. Turnover 193 million, and you end up with £101,000 in profit. I wouldn't say it's not worth it, but it's almost not worth it. Going to go over to equally troubling news. over on the chat here from Jim Turner. I am now the unemployed Jim Turner. About 10 of us got laid off on 5 p.m. on Friday without any notice. Then more got laid off on Saturday morning. Think the firm is going to go pop. First and foremost, thoughts are with you, Jim. I'm sure you'll be back in work in next to no time. And obviously, for your fellow colleagues that have also been laid off, I think that's an absolutely tragic thing to happen, and to come as a surprise. To get no actual prior warning so that you can plan ahead. Not good at all. I should be watching that one with interest. Going back to our talk about this guy that was killed up in Scotland, and not go out the site in a body bag. Why do people not listen to safety briefings and not take chances? Again, until we know the circumstances of exactly what happened, I don't know whether that was the case. Was there a failure in safety? Was it one of those things that you literally have to put down as an accident? I'd love nothing more than to be able to wave a magic wand and say, accidents are a thing of the past, but accidents are a thing. Chris Ford saying, not good, Jim. Yeah, absolutely. Ken saying, if that mic gets any bigger, we won't be able to see you. I'm just going for optimum sound, particularly as I was on a podcast just before I came on. So I've got it set literally sort of a fist away, which is the way you're supposed to do it, a fist away from my mouth just to get maximum bass in my voice. Because I wouldn't say I've got a particularly deep voice, but this kind of helps. But they do, unfortunately, language barriers and a lack of awareness is rife. Again, I'm not going to speculate on this, and I don't think the language barrier has got anything to do with the situation up in Scotland. It's bloody cheeky, Chris. I don't mind being finished, but I expect a week's notice, as that's what I'd give if I was jacking. Yeah. I don't think that's too much to ask. Not just thanks for your work today, lads. Don't come back on Monday. Your presence is no longer required. Dan, looking forward to seeing a few regeneration projects starting in seeing movement in demolition and construction. There's Ken saying, sorry to hear that, Jim. Wow, that's not good. Sorry to hear. See what I can do. And you missed a comment from before. Not sure what one I've missed, Dan. If you'd like to represent it, I'll go back to it. Chris says, I agree with what you're saying, Jim, but you could have worked a week for nothing if the bovine scatter hits the bovine scatter hits the fan. Superb. And Gary Muirhead saying, good morning, everyone. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Had I not done that? Kind of got caught up in everything else. Right, it is time to get the show underway. Hang on a minute. Yeah, we need a bit of this. Okay, going back to Dan, what he was saying about language barriers and stuff, he was talking about sites around the country. Fair comment. Mick Norton says, going back to all things health and safety related, he says the number of main grade HSE inspectors responsible for investigations dropped significantly over the last 2 decades, from 962 in 2003 to 617 by 2023, leading to hundreds of investigations being shelved due to lack of resources. I don't think anybody in this industry particularly relishes the idea of a visit from the HSE. But bearing in mind that, part of their job is the policing of the industry, part of their job is to educate. That's why they present their findings in the aftermath of a successful prosecution. This is what happened. This is why. This is what went wrong. If they're not doing that, if they are literally shelving the investigations, the industry as a whole suffers. Jim says, this van of theirs is worth more than my last week's wages. Have you handed it back yet? Be interested to know. Right, okay, so it is time. It is time to crack on with the show because we are 21 minutes in and we've done absolutely nothing so far. Komatsu have a new wheel loader aimed primarily at the waste industry, and it looks like this.
I'm Scott Ruderman, Product Marketing Manager at Komatsu, here to talk about a new wheel loader outfitted for waste, scrap, and recycling applications, the WA475-11WH. As you can see, it's built like a tank. This waste configuration includes many guards, deflectors, and hose wraps designed to help protect both critical machine components and your crew from harm. Best of all, you will customize the guarding and configure it to the unique hazards of your operation in partnership with your Komatsu dealer. This workhorse features solid tires and is an ideal blend of performance and fuel economy. Compared to the WA475-10, it uses 7% less fuel while delivering 20% more power from the efficient Komatsu DBA 127 engine. It will also help reduce your maintenance costs by up to 26% compared to the previous model, mainly due to extended service intervals. The cab is made for operator comfort and control. It's spacious with exceptional visibility, low noise, and joystick steering system that's easy to use. If you're looking for a rugged wheel loader that's built to excel in harsh waste, scrap, and recycling applications, check out the WA475-11WH.
Just going back to the chat, Jim's van is staying until he's paid. Nothing like a bit of leverage. Not quite the same as having a consistent job, but at least you've got something going in your favour, Jim. What have we got next? Oh yeah, we're off to the Emerald Isle with a greenish machine.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Probably stretching a point to describe Kobelco as green. I mean, environmentally they may well be, but I think they're more of a turquoise. But they're off in Ireland doing this. Going back a video, Chris Ford just said, I was liking that Komatsu until he said solid tyres. Operator comfort goes out the window. Yeah, but would you want to be working in a waste transfer station with regular airfield tyres, punctures until the cows come home? And Dan Cullen saying, good morning to Gary, Jim, and all your plant and porn addicts. Good morning, all, and thank you for joining us. And good morning to everybody that's over on Instagram. They're going through fast so I can actually read them, but there's lots of people over on Instagram as well. We've got more. We're talking JCB 3CXs in a minute. The Pro version, in fact, after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Talking about people being laid off, Dan saying it's unbelievable they drop you, Jim, after all you've done for them. Saying that, I had the same here, and that £700 wasn't a bonus. I had to send back due to an error on site. I mean, that feels like salt in the wound to me. Here's a £700 bonus. We'd like it back. That's a shitty thing to do. Chris Ford says, doing what it should, ran a couple of New Holland Kobelcos. They weren't bad machines. No, I have to say, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm a huge fan of the Kobelco brand. Yes, I've promised you JCB 3CX Pro. A company called SWN Plant, who I don't know, but they've got one and they are here to talk about it.
We are a groundworks business based in Barrow and Furness, South Cumbria. We cover all aspects of groundworks. We typically work throughout South Cumbria and North Lancashire. We were previously running a 2.5 tonne 360 excavator, an 8 tonne and a 15 tonne. Now we're running 2.5 tonne 3CX and a 15 tonne. This is my first JCB. It was the dual drive feature that really attracted me to the 3CX and the all-round versatility, especially with 50km gearbox. It's ideal for us in terms of getting machines to and from site quickly. I spoke to the sales representative from Scott's. He came down initially and assessed our business and gave some honest feedback, and we decided that it could potentially be a good fit. We went down to JCB's quarry to see what its capabilities were, and I was impressed and placed the order. A big factor for me in purchasing the 3CX was the all-round versatility. I feel like it's got a really good place within our fleet. It can do a bit of everything. With the front end, with the front bucket, 6-in-1, you can dig, you can load, you can carry, you can grade. You've got the forks for loading, and then you can turn around and you've got the back end there with a nice size bucket on the end of it. One thing that really impressed me as well was the smooth ride on the front end with the full buckets on the road. We've got some bumpy roads around here, and it does really absorb the bumps well. But especially with the new dual drive feature, it really ups the game in that respect, I think, because it just allows us to be much more flexible, much quicker, much more productive, and ultimately more profitable. The dual drive is spot on for jobs like this because I'm excavating the topsoil here, putting that to one side, and once I've done that, I can keep moving back. We can concentrate on getting some pipe in, and once the pipe's in and backfilled, I can then come and reinstate and clean up on my own, and I can send the other guys to another job, reducing our labour costs quite significantly. In regards to typical house building work, it's suitable to do excavating footings, reduce digs, drainage, generally all aspects really. The dual drive, you know, in a house building environment like that, it really does come into its own. It just really makes a backhoe a better option and a better fit, much more user friendly and much more effective on the job. The 50km/h gearbox was a real standout feature for me. We were at a bit of a crossroads with my business in terms of our fleet and transportation. I felt like 3CX would be a good all-round fit. I can jump in it in the morning, I can be on site in relatively quick time. If we were to hire a low loader to move the 8-tonne machine that we had, it would have been £480. So straight away I've almost saved £500. It's also reducing the amount of machines on site, the amount of labour on site, the amount of diesel consumed, and also, you know, it's providing a better service to the customer at a lower cost. They are not what some people have in their head, especially not these modern incarnations.
Fine machine and no mistake. Jim Turner says 12 years is a long time at one firm, but it's changed over the years. The old fella died and it changed a bit. Then one of the partners sold out to the other and things seem to start slipping. That's all it takes. Best example of that, hear me out here. I do like to get off at tangents from time to time. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I don't think they do, but Little Chefs. Do you remember the Little Chef restaurants up and down the motorway network of the UK? And they were so dependent upon the management. There was one that I used to go to maybe twice a year on the way up to Bircham Newton, the CITB, what is now the National Training College of the Construction Industry Training Board. And there was a Little Chef on the way up there, probably within about 5 or 10 miles of the CITB. location. And it was incredibly good. Incredibly good. The service was fast, was friendly. The food was always piping hot. It was absolutely fantastic. And then I went in there once, and you kind of build up a bit of a rapport or whatever. And the service was slow, and the food arrived and was a bit crappy. And I said, you know, not complaining, but not your usual standard. And the waitress just went, "New manager." And that was it. That was the beginning of the end. Yeah, no, I think I went back there once and it was still pretty poor. Yeah, change of management can have a major impact. We've got one more film to bring you, which is 4.5 minutes long, but I'll show you that in just a moment. Going back to Jim, he says, now I think it's caught up with them all of a sudden. Can't really run efficiently with the three 13-ton brand new machines sitting on a job doing sod all and probably being paid for on the monthly. Yeah. Yeah. The number of times you see it, a company goes pop in this industry, and, the biggest debt is usually to HMRC. The second biggest debt almost always is either to a recruitment company, agency, or to a leasing company. So often the case. In defense of demolition was the reason I was on the podcast with the refurb retrofit guy this morning, Matt Malloy. Good morning, Matt, if you're watching. Thank you for having me on the thing. When that comes out, I'll be sure to share it all with you. But we've got one final film. Let me take that away because we've got one final film. A company over in America called Firmacore. They had 1.5 miles of overpass to take down, and they did it in some style.
I've been in the demolition business for 32 years, and it's one of the toughest jobs I've ever done. A lot of it is the close proximity of the buildings, the close proximity of the live traffic, the close proximity of pedestrians, and it just makes it very difficult. My name's Kelly Arnold. I'm with Firma Corporation. I'm the National Projects Division Manager. I'm overseeing the viaduct demolition. When you start doing demolition, if you got to kind of reverse engineer it and take it down. So it's a little different than construction. We look for failures. We create failures in girders. We create failures in structure. And we have to know exactly how to create that failure safely. And we do that very well. When you have a bridge that was built 50 or 60 years ago, it's not like modern construction that you see now. When we first start wrecking this bridge, we start by punching out the roadway between the girders. We call it slotting the deck. We use a hammer on top. We wrap the hammers with rubber to keep the dust down and prevent rock from flying. So we've got to pay real close attention around the building. We hang curtains to protect the buildings as we're slotting the deck. These curtains have to be up 100% of the time. We use the biggest machine we have to take down the upper girders. It has 1,600 ton of squeezing power and munches through girders pretty easily. When we get really close to buildings, we will saw cut the girders and we'll lift them out with cranes. And then we'll munch down the column. And then we'll come in and take care of the lower deck. And then we'll remove the footing. There's so much material, you can't haul it all fast enough. So you got to get it flattened out and leveled out to where you can work on it. And then your cleanup crew will come behind. We separate the rebar. We turn it into rebar bundles, what you can see right here. The rebar is extremely heavy. I'm guessing it's probably 35 pound a foot for the big bar. And then we get the concrete loaded up and hauled out of here. This project is probably going to turn out to be about 99% recycled. We're recycling all the bar, all the concrete's being recycled. We're putting the concrete back in the tunnel. Once everything is cleaned up, we reopen the streets and we keep moving forward. This demolition business is inherently dangerous. We're in such tight quarters that these operators really have to pay attention. They're picking up big wads of bar and they're swinging it, they're moving concrete. These radios are the key to our survival out there. Everybody's watching and spotting for each other. Even your water guys, they're communicating with the operators. And depending on which way you're wrecking and which way the sun's coming in, the water and the sun, it just gets in front of that operator and he cannot see. So what we do is we've got a guy up on a man lift, he's spraying water, and at the same time he's communicating with that operator, and he's his eyes up there. He's actually his eyes. These operators are some of the best in the business. I'm really proud of these guys, doing a really good job and doing it safe. One of the most rewarding things is when you see the public just watching us work. We hear a lot of good things from the public. You see some of the tenants that's up in these buildings are putting up big signs. It's really nice. You're making history here. You're changing skylines forever. When you hear the good stuff and people actually appreciate what you're doing and they see that you're really trying to beautify the city, that's what it's about.
Cracking job. Absolutely cracking job. If anyone's interested, go over to YouTube and have a look at the Thermocore YouTube website. I'm not sure if he's still with them, but they used to have a guy working for them doing their demolition work who was absolutely top notch. Let's have a look there. Peter McKenna. First of all, Peter says, morning all. On the mend, 12 days without a cigarette and enjoying life. Hope everyone is well. Well, Peter, I'm glad to hear you're well. I'm doing okay, all things considered. Kind of caught up on a bit of rest over the weekend, but I'm sure everybody else is okay. But if you're arriving late, you may not know Jim Turner is currently unemployed, Jim Turner, but not for long, I would imagine. Ken Hatcher didn't fancy working up on that viaduct. And there is Peter again. Look at the railway bridge they demolished and replaced half a day earlier than expected at Penrith. We actually had the demolition on the show last week. That was Armac doing, the Bridge Busters doing their thing. They'd spray that hose at me on the site, yeah. You wouldn't be the first. And this wasn't deliberate. I've just mentioned Armac. When we went to the site where they were taking down an approach to Wembley Stadium, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago, they were very, very conscious of dust and everything else. So they had manual, guy with hose, but they also had some automatic dust suppression there. But very, very fine mist. Very fine mist. And I was stood there getting increasingly cold, and it was only then that I realised I was absolutely soaked through. It was, like you get that really light rain. That is it raining? Is it raining? Yes, and that was that. Mick says, I like the comment. All the operators are constantly watching and spotting for each other, precisely as it should be. Precisely as it should be. Anyway, people, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe, look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. Given the tragic events over the weekend, the original tragic event was on Friday, and then the guy sadly passed away on Saturday. Please take care of yourselves. You heard the guy from Thermocore there saying demolition is an inherently dangerous business, and we had a very stark reminder of just how dangerous that is over the weekend. So do look after yourselves. But if you have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after, when I can find it, after this. If you live in the UK and have a TV, the chances are you've seen the commercial for Febreze, in which they talk about becoming so accustomed to foul odours in our homes that we have, in effect, become nose blind. Now, I've got to be honest, I actually thought the term nose blind was created by an advertising agency to sell more cans of spray. But it turns out it's a real phenomenon. Nose blindness, or olfactory fatigue as it's properly known, is when your nose stops detecting a familiar smell after prolonged exposure. And perhaps that's the reason that those working at waste transfer stations and landfill sites can tolerate what to the rest of us is a pretty unpleasant whiff. Although it's totally unconnected, my thoughts about nose blindness were triggered by two things this past week. The first was a discussion about site fatalities in the UK demolition and construction industry in 2024-25. It was Andy Thornton here on the show talking about it. And the second was an article about the true purpose of personal protective equipment, or PPE, and high visibility clothing. During the discussion about fatal demolition and construction incidents, Andy Thornton pointed out that all 35 people killed during the 2024-25 period died as a result of falls from height. To put that another way, none of those fatal accidents during the last recorded period could have been prevented by PPE. You can wear all the high-vis clothing, hard hats, site boots, safety gloves and safety glasses you wish, but none of it will protect you from a fall from height. It's also worth noting that there are other... Excuse me. Tea's gone down the wrong hole. It's also worth noting that there are two other unofficial causes of death in the industry that are likewise not prevented by PPE. Deaths from asbestos-related diseases will have topped the 2,000 mark during the same period. In all likelihood, there will have been another 500 deaths by suicide in that time as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for health and safety measures. I have no problem with working men and women wearing PPE. I own several sets myself, and I wouldn't even think of walking onto a site without it. But it is noteworthy that the most visible form of health and safety in the demolition and construction industry actually had no bearing whatsoever on the 2,500 plus annual death toll. Now, within a few days of that discussion, I came across an article by a guy called Andrew Groves, Professor of Fashion Design at the University of Westminster, in which he discussed the true function of high-vis clothing. And there were a couple of sentences in his article that really resonated. High-vis is the most conspicuous part of the visual environment, yet also the easiest to ignore. You see it without really registering it. It sits in the background doing its job. And he continued, fluorescence was never about the person, only the task. The worker vanishes behind the logic of safety. And this is the bit that got me. And when something is everywhere, it becomes invisible by design. And here's the thing. On demolition and construction sites across the world, those fluorescent vests, jackets and trousers are everywhere. Have we tuned them out? Have they become so familiar that we barely even register them anymore? Have we become high-vis blind? Before we get into all that, I've got a couple of quick points. Firstly, if high visibility and fluorescent clothing and colours truly worked, why haven't we insisted that all site equipment be painted bright yellow or neon orange? There is a trend at the moment to paint handrails and excavator boxing rings in fluorescent yellow, presumably so we can see them more clearly. Well, that's fine for operators that are up close with those grab handles. We wouldn't want them to miss them. But what about their colleagues working close by? If high-vis and fluorescence really worked, would it not be a good idea to ensure that the whole machine was fluorescent? Furthermore, has anyone given any real thought to the nature of seasonal lighting conditions? Let me tell you a quick story. My dad was a very good fisherman, a match angler. In his tackle box were all the things you probably expect: hooks, fishing line, lead weights and floats, loads and loads of floats, each painted black with a fluorescent orange or yellow tip. When that tip sank below the surface of the water, it was an indication that a fish was hopefully on the hook. But alongside all those floats, my dad always had a black marker pen, because sometimes at the height of summer when the sun was shining, he would use that marker to colour that fluorescent tip black to make it stand out against the brightness of the water. So would black PPE work better during certain parts of the year? And before you dismiss that as the ramblings of a madman, consider this. In 2019, when I visited Japan as part of the European Demolition Association study tour, we visited a demolition site, and we were all given the usual yellow and orange high-vis vests. But the workers on the site were wearing pristine navy blue overalls emblazoned with fluorescent white stripes. To my Western eyes, those Japanese demolition workers not only looked much smarter than their European counterparts, but they stood out superbly against the Japanese sunshine. Having thought about this subject for longer than is probably healthy, I'm left with several questions. If high-vis works for people, why isn't it being applied to equipment? If it's really about standing out, is there not a time and a place for navy blue or even black high-vis clothing? And perhaps the biggest question of all is this. Is high-vis clothing really about safety? Or is it, as Professor Andrew Groves suggests, about conformity, compliance, adherence to rules, and the suppression of expression? If you are constantly surrounded by people wearing fluorescent orange, fluorescent yellow, do you notice them? Or are they familiar? Have you become nose blind with your eyes? Richard Hunton said, would a harness be classed as PPE? If so, does it then go back to lack of planning? Well, harnesses, I think harnesses are considered a part of the PPE arrangement, although obviously for very specific jobs. But it does go back to planning. But again, I would ask this. If you're working on a site where there is 10, 20, 100 people all wearing high-vis, do you tune them out? I'm not saying you do, I'm asking if you do. Do you tune them out? And well, first and foremost, would it not be more striking if there was something more unusual? Give you an example. You're driving along a motorway, you're doing 73.25 miles per hour, and you're following a line of traffic. You're a safe distance, and yes, you're paying attention. You know what's in front of you, behind you, to the side of you, on either side, but you're kind of in the zone. You're driving. The thing that snaps you out of that zone is a blink of a brake light. If that brake light was on all the time, how much notice would you take, if any? But the fact that that comes as a bit of a shock to the system makes you react. If you are working day in, day out, 8 till 5 or whatever, does that really make it stand out? Richard Hunton says 100% you do. The only colour I notice now is pink high-vis, which I assume is female. Yeah, there has been. I could do a whole show on this, to be perfectly honest with you. This notion of pink high-vis. The thing keeping women out of this industry is not the colour of their PPE, nor is it the fit of their PPE. You know, I'd like, if there are any women working within the industry, I want them to be comfortable. Their trousers shouldn't be a yard too long for them. They should be allowed, accommodate their hips. Their high-vis vests and jackets should accommodate their boobs. I'm all for it, but trust me when I say the thing keeping women out of this industry is not the cut, the fit, or the colour of their PPE. It's the nature of the industry. But Richard Hunton, good morning to you. Where are you tuning in from, Richard? Love to hear from you. Going over to the chat. Let's have a look at this. Andy Thornton, who was actually... Now, Andy, you're going to think I'm making this up. There were no dancing girls. Today seemed inappropriate. There was no free money. But my morning monologue today, I actually mentioned you. Because we were talking about your point about PPE, middle of last week, I think it was, about the fact that 35 people were killed on UK demolition and construction sites in 2024-25, all killed by falls from height, which would have been unpreventable by the use of PPE. That was one of the things that drove me to produce today's morning monologue. And you were mentioned. This is not a wind up. This is not a drill. You were actually mentioned, because it's one of those things. When you said it, it was like, there's something there. Tucked it in the little filing cabinet around the back of my head, and lo and behold, it bounced to the forefront. Richard Hunton says, I went to a leading PPE supplier to kit out a female years ago. Almost impossible, and he's up in North Yorkshire. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, I know it's not a mass market. I think the last time I saw the figures, we were talking about ladies and women making up about 14% of the UK demolition and construction industry. But 14%, you'd have thought, I mean, you would have thought that a PPE supplier would have seen kind of a gap in the market. Oh, let's make some funky, well-fitted PPE for ladies, not necessarily pink. Because again, I wonder about that. As I say, I don't actually believe that it's the colour of the PPE or the cut of the PPE that's keeping women out of the industry. But bearing in mind, we now have an industry where, or a rule and regulation whereby the employer is required to provide PPE to their workforce, even agency workers. What is the point of actually having pink PPE? As I don't know, a female crane driver, female excavator operator, you might be tempted. I want to play up to my feminine charms and qualities. I've had my hair done, I've got my makeup on, I've got my fancy nails. I'd like a pink high-vis jacket. But A, why are you buying it when your employer should be giving it to you? And B, does it comply with the I mean, I've been on site, I've walked on sites before wearing all yellow PPE and been told you need orange. Now, thankfully, I carry both, so I went back to the car, got the orange one. But I've also had it the other way around. I've arrived in orange and been told, no, it's strictly yellow here. Which kind of begs the question, going back to that point about looking but not seeing. When I was in Japan, the fact that everyone was wearing navy blue overalls with a white stripe, a white high-vis stripe across the chest, round the waist, was really whoa, it really cool. Would that not be an idea? Rather than having everybody conforming to all orange or all yellow, if you had somebody if everyone was wearing yellow and one person was wearing orange, that person wearing orange would surely stand out more. Is that not the purpose of PPE? To make them stand out more? Love to get your thoughts. Martin Rugg, good morning to you over on Instagram, and good morning to Benjamin AGD over on Instagram as well, and Fokker de Jong over on Instagram as well. I wonder, the point that Professor Andrew Groves, who I don't know, just happened upon his article, but this idea of PPE being more about compliance and conformity, I wonder if that's the case. I did drop him a message saying that I appreciated his article, and one of the things that it reminded me of, back in the day when I used to play football for my school football team, we used to play our games on a Saturday, and even though we were on our own time, we were expected to arrive for our football matches wearing full school uniform, shirts, ties, blazers, trousers, shoes, the whole kit and caboodle, because we were told we were representing the school. Which I guess we were. But was that also about conformity as well? Or even traceability? If we'd had our football match, won, drawn or lost, headed off to the train station or the bus stop to get ourselves back home again, stopped for a bag of chips, which as prime athletes we always did, and had a punch-up with the opposing school. Was our school uniform to keep us in order, even though there were no teachers there, or was it so that they could trace us afterwards? Ah, yes, there was a little blonde fella, quite clearly a midfield maestro, blonde hair, and he was wearing a blazer with a green and red badge on it. They'd have had me up before the beak on the Monday morning. Is that what it was about? Love to get your thoughts. I'm going to do a thing today, by the way. Just a very quick reminder, we'll be going live on Thursday afternoon with Volvo to coincide with their pre-ConExpo press conference. I'll be doing that on Thursday afternoon. But I'm going to try a thing today. I'm going over to Substack, and I know some of you already follow me on Substack. I'm going to probably go live about 2:30 this afternoon. I'm doing it, I think I mentioned last week, I've actually had kind of a live stream setup to be able to go live over there on Substack for about a week now. And I've been planning to, I will do it, and I will do it. And I keep putting it back. I think the fact that we've got this major talking point in the industry at the moment, the fact that we've lost another one of our number to a site accident, I think the time has come. So I'm planning to go live over there at 2:30 this afternoon. Don't expect any of you to turn up because I know you'll all be up to your eyes and doing your things or whatever. But it's an opportunity for me to kind of test the system, just to make sure that I can broadcast over there as easily as I can broadcast over here. So if you do find yourself bored, I mean, Jim, if you're at home and you fancy tuning into that, just go over to demolitioninsider.com, I think it is. Let me just make sure. Yes, demolitioninsider.substack.com, and you'll be able to tune into that right there. Failing that, I will be back here tomorrow with yet more of the same. Hopefully a more cheerful show tomorrow, I'd like to think. No easy way to leave it, is there, really? It's become... I said last week about this notion of having a league table of deaths in the industry. They happen with such frequency that we've actually got in place a league table. I think the other thing that it throws up is it happens with such regularity that you find yourself saying things like, our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends. And you say it with such regularity, it doesn't actually mean anything anymore. There's no follow-on to that. I mean, I don't know what you do about that. All I can say is, I'd like to think that Rangers Football Club will do the minute of applause for the guy on the 36th minute later this week. I hope his family are okay. I don't know how they will be, but I hope they're okay. I don't know if they're doing any kind of GoFundMe page for them. If they are, I'll be more than happy to share the details of it. And I think it's worth saying as well, this is an incident that happened on a site being operated by Kasky Limited or Kasky Demolition. If you go over to demolitionnews.com, the lead story today is about that, and there is a comment there from one of the directors of the company. Very well considered. It's easy to point fingers and to point blame. We don't know the circumstances. We don't know how he died, why he died, or anything else. But Kasky Demolition won't be a big company. They're a company I know of rather than know, but they won't be a big company. Everyone that works for Kasky Demolition will be feeling that this morning and for some time to come. Having interviewed people that have had employees killed on their sites, I know the impact that it has, a lasting impact. So Kasky Demolition, obviously thoughts are with the family first and foremost, thoughts are with his friends, but thoughts are very much today with the men and women at Kasky Demolition. There's nothing more I can add to that. People, I'll be back here tomorrow for yet more of the same. You'll be bored to death with me come Friday because I'll have been here so often. Until then, everybody, do me a favour. Do look after yourselves. Worst part of my job. Worst part of my job by a million miles is reporting that somebody's died. Second worst part of my job is reporting that somebody's gone out of business. I'd rather not do either of those. So if you can see your way clear to remaining healthy and in business, I'd be grateful. Had a comment very quickly from Andy Thornton, says full harnesses aren't mandatory because UK law prioritises preventing falls, not surviving them. Guardrails and proper platforms come first, and harnesses are only required when safer options are missing. Did not know that. And Andy saying, have a safe one, everyone. Yeah. Today of all days, try, please, to have a safe one. I'd like you here tomorrow, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and with all your extremities in place. I'll see you tomorrow.